What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Rise Up Rich podcast. I'm your host, David Haas, in the studio alone today. I really got to get some guests scheduled in. So if you know anyone that wants to be a guest on my podcast, or if you want to be a guest on my podcast and you feel that you have something to share that will provide value to my listeners, then hit me up. Instagram, David F. Haas, or you can email me at davidhaasofficial@gmail.com. And love to have you on as a guest if you think you have some value to offer to everyone that listens to the podcast, because I think people are getting bored of listening to me by myself. So anyways, put that out there. But today's podcast is about starting your own business, why businesses fail. October is Small Business Month or something along those lines. Like I literally feel like there's a month for every single thing in the world now. Or a day for everything. So, but because that's it, I've been an entrepreneur since I was 16 years old. I started my first company when I was 16 called Squeaky Clean Window Washing, which I actually grew to like a relatively successful company. I ended up having like 5 employees, and we were doing like over $100,000 a year in sales, which was great. And I used the sale of that company to buy my first bar restaurant, which kind of led me into the restaurant field. But yeah, so I think entrepreneurship has been in me. And, if you listen to Gary Vee, if you're listening to this podcast and you like entrepreneurship, and you probably listen to Gary Vee, I guess, a lot of what he talks about is that entrepreneurship is inside of you. But I definitely think it is a skill that can be acquired, but you do have to have that risk adverse, not being really too concerned about the risks that are associated with starting a small business. The great news is, though, in today's day and age, like you can start a small business for a lot cheaper. If I look at like the restaurant business, in order to open up a restaurant, you need probably $300,000 to $500,000 to open up a treehouse style bar restaurant now, and that's just a very significant investment, and you could really end up losing your shirt really quickly with that. But the great news is that because of the internet and because of what's available today, I started my coaching business for essentially nothing, right? So, I invested in some camera equipment and things like that, but it was so small. My wife started a tattoo company, and she had to put in a good year and a half of being an apprentice and drawing like mad and a bunch of stuff. But as far as the startup costs go, they were pretty much non-existent. So there are a million opportunities like that to start a business for technically next to nothing. You can also create it if you're really adverse to risk. You can just make it like your side hustle, and eventually your side hustle can turn into your primary source of income. Obviously, if you just leap right in, it's going to be a lot easier because you're just going to be 100% dedicated to making sure that this thing pays your bills, which is obviously a motivator. But the good news is, the point of that long rant was, you can start a business for a lot cheaper than you can. And that's pretty much the number one question I get as a coach, or people messaging me on Instagram saying like, I want to start this business, but I don't know how. And if you've listened to my podcast, you know that the how gets revealed by taking action. So just start taking action. And I remember vividly this one guy that he wanted to start a bar restaurant, and I hear a lot of people that want to start bar restaurants, and I'd actually advise against that, because it is probably one of the toughest businesses to become successful at, and the entry point is high. Like I said, if you're starting a place from scratch, you need $300,000 to $500,000. You probably need to have partners and investors, and if you're just starting out, it's going to be tough. The businesses that I would say would be good if you're just starting out are businesses that have low barriers to entry. Like, for example, a window washing company that I started when I was 16 years old. If a 16-year-old can get into it, then you should be able to get into it. So I think my window washing company, I started that company for maybe $500, right? And I grew it to a $100,000 a year company. And the reason being is because I just delivered amazing value and amazing service. So when people ask me, how do you get into business? Well, this is the number one thing, is figure out what it is you want to do and answer your why. Like, what is it that you want to do? And let me just say this clearly. It's not because you want to make money, right? It's just like it can't be your why. The money cannot be your why. If you make money the why, you're going to fail. And you can use me as an example. Money was my why for a long time, and I failed for many years. Okay. It wasn't until I changed my why that everything completely changed, or not even changed my why, I just identified what my why was. And once I understood that my why was to give back, help others, teach other people what I've learned, then everything could transform. And I was able to transform that why into my current business, which is the Treehouse Bar and Grill downtown Windsor, which I just changed from giving to getting. So I could still deliver amazing value. I could still be a mentor and a leader to my staff and to my manager. So I just morphed my why into my current business. So it doesn't mean you have to change jobs or whatever. You just have to really understand what is your purpose and what are you here on this planet to do? What kind of impact are you supposed to have? And I'll save you the time. At the root of it is helping people in some way, shape, or form. If you're able to help people solve a problem, then that is essentially your business. So it doesn't mean you have to become a life coach or a teacher or whatever. It could be, like you could argue that Steve Jobs helped helped all kinds of people, millions of people, by allowing them to have music in their pocket, right? So it doesn't have to be this big, giant, save the world kind of thing. It just has to be solving a problem and helping people. Okay, so if you can get connected with what that why is, that's where you start. So let me go back to this call. So this guy calls me and says, I want to open up a restaurant. And I said, okay, well, what are you doing right now? Like what? And he's like, well, I'm in school for nursing. And I was like, well, what the fuck are you doing that for? Right? Like, what are you in school for nursing if you want to become a restaurateur? And he's like, well, because I figured I'd go to school, get my nursing degree, work for 4 or 5 years, earn the income, bank the income, and then I'll have enough capital to start the business. And I was like, well, that's about the most backwards thinking that I've ever heard of, right? But I think a lot of people get caught in it. I need to make this amount of money, and then I'm going to go and do what I love to do. But it's just like, what I suggested to him is like, why don't you just go and get a job in a bar and restaurant right now? Become a waiter, become a bartender, become a server, whatever it may be, and just deliver the most amazing amount of value possible to your employer, to your customers, to your co-workers. And by being in the field of the restaurant business, you're going to learn the little ins and outs. You're going to start to see the opportunities that pop up. You're going to see that the bar down the street is about to close and they need a cash injection, and you have $50,000 and you can go in there and become a partner. That's actually how I got into the bar business. I was in the field of the bar business. I was managing and bartending at a local nightclub called Rush Nightclub. If you're old and you're listening to this, you'll remember what that is. It's the Foundry, what the Foundry is now. And because I was in the field, I was immersed in it. I knew every in and out. I knew everybody, every owner. I knew every bartender, and I got all the insight. And then because I had that insight, it came into my radar that the Treehouse Bar and Grill, which has been primarily a restaurant, was looking to sell or looking for new ownership. And that was my opportunity to get in relatively cheap. And I bought out one of the partners, and I ended up eventually buying out the other 2 partners. So you just have to be in it. So I did the math for this guy, and I said, okay, well, you're going to go to school. You're going to spend, let's say, $60,000 going to school. You're going to be not working essentially for 4 years. So let's just say, even if you had a minimum wage job, you'd be making like, let's say $30,000 a year if you're working 40 hours a week. So you lost out on the $60,000 going to school. You lost out on the $120,000 you would have made over the course of 4 years. So you're in the whole $200,000, right? But now you still have to go and work for another 4 years. So you add another $120,000 onto that. So now you're in the whole $320,000, and you're 8 years in, and you're not even remotely ready to open up a restaurant. And I was just like, it's just silly, right? What he failed to see was the opportunity cost, right? The opportunity cost. What is opportunity cost? Opportunity cost is the amount of money you're missing out on by not taking action on a current idea. Okay, so it's like, if he would have just went and got a job in a bar or restaurant, he would have saved the $60,000 in schooling. He would have obtained so much knowledge about what it takes to be a restaurateur. It's like, one of the things I always tell my staff, and maybe it's not this anymore because I've really stepped away, but I can do every single job at Treehouse, right? I can bus run, bartend, serve tables, cook the food, promote, bounce. I can do it all, right? And it's because I was in the business for so long, I understood every single aspect of that business. And when you get to that level, then it's very easy to transition into ownership, right? So, and especially in the bar restaurant industry, not right now with COVID and everything, it's not as lucrative as it once was, but back in my day, being a bartender, I was earning like $1,500 a week in cash, right? So it was very easy for me to save a ton of cash. And the reason that I moved up through that company and was able to, save a bunch of money was because anytime they called me and said, hey, can you come in for an extra shift? I was like, yes, right? Because I was just like, I was so in the field. So I just over-delivered for the people that I work for. I over-delivered for the customers that came in, right? And because of that, I created a bunch of opportunity. I made a bunch of money. And then when an opportunity arose to buy into a bar and take it as my own, I was able to seize it. So to answer this question, it's like just get into the field of consciousness of whatever it is that you want to do. This guy wanted to open up a bar restaurant. So it's like, if you want to be in the field of owning a bar restaurant, probably the last place you should go is into the field of nursing. Makes pretty simple sense. So it's just like get into the field, right? And you'll be able to make a ton of money in that field because that's what you want to do. That's where your passion is, right? If your passion is not in nursing, if your passion is in the restaurant business, then just get in the restaurant business. That passion is going to be the way it was for me, which was like anytime they called me, I was there. I was over delivering for my customers. They were tipping me like mad. You can make a good earning or good living by becoming a bartender server. And then if you're smart with your money and you bank your money, you're going to save up a ton of money, live below your means. And then that's going to give you the capital to get into business, right? And there'll be opportunities to get in cheap. You can do what I did and get in as a partner. You can take over a place that is going out of business and rebrand it, whatever it may be. So that's basically how you do it. So now if it's a business that doesn't require $300,000 or $400,000 to start, then I would just start doing it immediately, right? It's like just start the business, whatever it is. Like if you want to have a client of mine that wants to be a social media marketer where she like manages advertising and social media content and stuff, I'm like, just start doing it, right? Keep your day job and start doing it on the side. And, once she put it out there that this is what she wanted to do, all of a sudden she started getting clients, So it's just about getting into it, getting into the field, and the opportunities are going to arise. So that's step one. So that is the how. You just get into action. There is no magic formula here where I'm going to say you got to find this guy to give you the money, loan you money. There's private equity people that are going to give you cash. It's like you can just throw all that bullshit out the window. No one's going to lend you money, right? It's just like yeah, there are businesses on a very high level that a good friend of mine, his granddaughter has, and I'm trying to get her as a guest on the podcast, but she has gotten all this money from these angel investors because they believe in her concept. Yeah, that money's out there, but it's rare, right? And if you're not thinking on the really grand scale, you're probably not going to be able to attract that money. Like no angel investor is investing in your restaurant concept. It's just not happening, right? So you got to have the money yourself. And maybe you do convince someone that to give you money. But you need to be so solid on that concept. You need to have every single element figured out. And I think the biggest thing that people don't answer in business also is how are you going to attract customers, right? So many times, especially in the bar restaurant business, I see people, I've talked about this before, but I see people just say, this is my concept. And they open up their doors and they just think if they build it, they will come. But no, it's you have to have a plan on how to attract these customers. Even in my coaching business, it's to tell you the truth, I didn't really have a plan on how I was going to attract customers. My plan, I guess, was to release a bunch of free social media content. I guess I did have a plan. Release a bunch of free social media content, and eventually that would, by giving, eventually people would start coming to me for coaching. And that's essentially exactly what happened. But In any other business, you just have to think about how you're going to attract customers and be willing to change that as much as possible, because sometimes what you think is going to work will not work. And this happens all the time with me, especially in this internet world where we're advertising online. I have something that I think is going to work and it fails miserably. So we have to remorph it, rechange it, recontextualize it, put it back out there, try it again. So just be failing as fast as you possibly can. That could be another tip for becoming an entrepreneur, is fail faster, right? You want to be failing at light speed because you're learning what doesn't work, right? So doesn't mean you release shit half-ass. It means you still put full quality into whatever promotion it is that you're trying to promote. But when that promotion fails, don't get tied to it because you put so much effort into it. You know, I've talked recently about how I created this program for like 3 months and, you know, it just tanked. And did I try and like, you know, keep putting money into it, keep putting money? No, I just cut it and said, that was it. It doesn't work. Move on to the next. You know, like I actually have a company right now. We haven't even remotely started promoting, so it's not failing yet. But I'm wearing one of the shirts right now, Effect Apparel. You can check it out, effectapparel.com. It's actually not even released to the public yet, but the website is live. So if you're listening to this podcast and you want to get a shirt, you can go over there. But this company took us like, 6 months to create. We had to find the suppliers for the shirts. We had to build the website. We had to understand the shipping. There was just so much. Build the social media. There was so much that we needed to figure out, right? And if we launch this thing and we put, let's say $10,000 into advertising and we're not selling shirts, I'm going to cut that thing as fast as possible, right? So that's because I'm not attached to anything. I'm not attached to the idea. I think it's a cool idea. I think it's really fun. The concept is we print these positive affirmations on shirts, but we print them backwards as well. So when you look in the mirror, you can see the affirmation to remind you throughout the day to hold in positive states of mind, like gratitude. So I think it's a really cool concept. Is it going to work? I have no fucking clue. Right? So I'm just not attached to the idea, right? So if it works, amazing, and we're gonna hammer it and we're gonna run it like a real professional business. If it doesn't work, we're gonna cut it, right? After we feel that we've gotten to a point. And this is a big mistake that people make in business, is that they hold on too long, right? And they usually end up sinking not only their own personal finances, but usually their friends, their family. They borrow from everyone. And I got into this, luckily for me, I was able to get back on my feet. But I got into that exact mentality when things were getting really shit. I was borrowing from every single person I could get my hands on, right? So luckily I was able to pay those people back that I borrowed money from. I was in debt to the government. I was able to pay them back, all of these things. So you don't hold on too long, fail faster. So that would be tip 2. I know I'm really rambling here, but I could have made this into like 5 podcasts, I guess. Okay. So the next one is, so if you understand what it is you want to do, now you've gotten into action, and you understand how you're going to attract business, then there's a few things that you need to definitely keep in mind when you're getting to business. One is, I personally have kind of avoided business partners, and like I've had business partners, but now where I feel that I'm going is I don't want any business partners. So this will be a question that you'll have to really ask yourself. Sometimes you put yourself into a position where you need business partners, right? Because you just don't have the capital, you don't have the know-how, whatever it may be. You need to bring somebody else in. And in those instances, I think probably a business partner is a good thing to have. Where a business partnership is not a good thing to have is just like, you have a business concept and you say, I'm just going to bring my friend into it for the fun of it, right? A lot of business relationships business partnerships, I should say, are just not formed properly, like for proper reasons. It's like, this is going to be a fun idea. Like, let's all open up a restaurant together. It's the worst idea ever, right? And I've made this decision. I've made this mistake many times. Like, I'll give you a real example, a real good example. So, when I was in this expansion mode of expanding my restaurant kind of business, I had this really cool concept for a restaurant, bar restaurant. It was going to be called the Well House. And what I did was I went around to all my friends and I got them all to invest $10,000, right? So I got 7 of my friends to invest $10,000, and we used that money to do the renovations, do whatever, pay first and last month's rent. And that was going to be, this concept. And I also thought I'm going to have 7, small interest partners that were going to bring friends and bring family in. seems like a really great idea and a really great concept. But the problem being was, now you have 7 people that have vested interest in this, and at the time, $10,000 to all of us was a lot of money. And so they want to see that investment return. They want to see this business. So now you got 7 people trying to give you suggestions, give you input on how they think the business should be run. And this is not attacking them in any means, blaming them for the failure of the business. I mean, there was a million reasons why that business failed, and this is not that at all. But now you're just answering to more people, right? So, and then the other problem in that business was that, so I had these 7 investors that I was answering to. Then I also had 2 other business partners that we were all equal, right? And that was the other major problem, that we were all equal in all our ventures. So we never had one person that was 100% like the CEO or the president of the company. And if you look at any major corporation, they all have somebody that's in charge, right? There's always a CEO of Apple, of Amazon or whatever. There's a CEO of these companies. And the reason being is because you need one person that is like the final say and says like, okay, we're going in this direction. Yeah, they take the input from their board or from whoever else or from their management team. But eventually it comes down to like, this is the direction we're going in, right? And then they take the praise when it succeeds, and they take the punishment, I guess, when it fails, right? And this is why CEOs get fired all the time, because they went in the wrong direction, right? But you need someone at the top. And I think that was the biggest mistake I made. I was in business with 2 other guys, super talented, smart guys, but we never had one person in charge. I'm not saying it had to be me. I was just saying we needed one person that was in charge, right? Because we needed that one clear direction to keep moving forward. So number 1 is, if you do have to get partners, you still have to have one CEO. That's essentially what the partnership problem is. The second thing is, don't get into a partnership just for the sake of getting into a partnership. They need to be bringing something to the table, right? So it's like they need to be bringing know-how. They need to be bringing time. They need to be bringing money, right? And then you probably still need to be, especially if you're the vision for the company, you probably still need to be the one that is making all the final calls. Okay, so that's it with partnership. The next thing is that prepare for success. That would be another thing I would say. Like, when we make business plans and we do all these things, like, we really romanticize like, oh, this is what we're going to do when we make all this money and we're going to be so successful. And yeah, in business plans, one of the things you're supposed to do is create a contingency plan, which is like what you're going to do if this thing fails. No one ever follows it. So it's like, you might as well, you're just making that for the sake of making it. The other thing is a business plan. It's like, you don't even need to make a business plan. Like, yeah, okay, this is an aside. I'm losing my train of thought here, but I'm just kind of going all over the place. But when people think, oh, I got to start a business, I need to make a business plan, I need to do this, I need to do this. It's like, no, you don't need to do any of that. You just get started. Like, just answer the question, can I get people to buy what I'm selling, right? If you answer that question, then yeah, you could really lay out a big plan on how you're going to expand and how you're going to grow. But in the beginning, if you don't answer that question, then there's no sense in spending any time on anything else other than answering that question. So a lot of people, what they do is they spend their life like creating a product. You see this all the time on like Dragon's Den or Shark Tank. They spend their life and lots of money. Like, oh my God, so much money. I just cry for these people when I see them on there. They spend their like life savings developing this product, and they think it's going to be the next great thing. So they've spent, let's say they spent $1 million, and they finally have this product, right? And then they go to sell it and no one buys it. It's like, oh shit. Maybe what you should have done was to test it and see if people are actually going to buy it before you invest a ton of money in it, right? So this is like a big thing that I love about the online world, is that you can just test like crazy. Like, I'm not saying you lie about what you have available, but I think you can test like prototypes. Like, there's GoFundMe things that now they're basically saying, here's what we're thinking about developing. Do you like the idea? If yes, order your product now before it comes into manufacturing. So that's how they're raising capital. So like, this is the new model of business. Figure out first if people actually want to buy it, and then you can go into the planning stages and the business plan and all of that. But like, you got to make sure that the demand exists for what it is that you want to sell. Okay, back to what I was saying though. Being prepared for success. So yes, we need to prepare for failure, right? And like I said, you're never going to follow it, but hopefully after listening to this podcast, you're able to cut a little bit quicker than you normally would before you completely, lose your house and your car and all this stuff, right? So you want to be able to cut quicker, fail faster, whatever you want to call it. But you also, on the other side of things, you want to plan for success. So I have this saying that nothing fails like success. And I was like the golden boy for this, because when I first started Treehouse, I took it from doing $500,000 a year to over $1 million in the first 3 years. And I was like, oh shit, like this is it. Success is here. Like I was making good money, at the time, which I thought was good money. I was making like $150K a year. And then, so what did I do? I proceeded to just kind of take my foot off the gas and relax. And I golfed 70 rounds in 1 year, and just kind of stepped away from the business. I didn't have a plan for success. And this also happened to me with weight loss and getting into amazing shape. I had this goal of getting super ripped, and I wanted to be 175 pounds, but I didn't have a plan for what I was going to do after I reached that goal, right? So I think that's a big thing for when you're getting into businesses. What are you going to do? What is that point where you're making a certain amount of money, and how are you going to keep that creativity and that momentum going, okay? Because you got to get out of this mindset that I'm pushing to this number. It's usually $1 million for everyone. I'm pushing to this $1 million dream. And then once I hit that $1 million dream, then I can relax. And then it's actually the exact opposite. It's like, yeah, you can take a moment to soak it in and be grateful that you're able to create a business that generated $1 million, but you need to be constantly moving forward and constantly adapting. I have this saying, it's like, I don't know, it's not my saying, but I live by it. It's like adapt or die, right? If you are not constantly creating, staying on the crest of the wave with regards to what it is in your industry that is really going to, that it's really moving, like it's really going to attract new customers, then you're going to get just swamped by that wave and completely drowned, right? And you see this so often in business where people just get comfortable, right? And they think they can just relax and, oh, the business is running fine. But it's like, no, it's like you got to be constantly coming up with new ideas, testing new concepts, playing around with Facebook ads, and making sure that you're attracting new customers. And I mean, even more so in the online world, because it's changing so fast, right? Let's say for coaching, for example, the one thing that was working really well in coaching was hey, here's my free, PDF. Come and get it for free. And then what we do is we get their email, and then we would send them out an email drip campaign, eventually leading them towards, hey, why don't you sign up for one of my online programs or whatever it may be. And yeah, it's still working. Is it working as good as it was 6 months ago? No, not even remotely, right? So in the online world, things are changing very quickly. In the physical market, service, bar, restaurant is changing a lot slower. But in the online world, it changes really, really fast. Okay. So regardless, though, you need to be moving forward at all times. You need to be staying creative. Okay. Let me move to creativity, since we're kind of snowballing off of that. So how do you become truly creative, and how do you stay on the crest of that wave? And this is really about getting outside of the circle of what you know. And I mean, I've released podcasts and a ton of content on this, but essentially is, you can only move forward from the circle of what you know. The circle of what you know is all the knowledge, everything that you've ever taken in. But in actuality, that circle represents 0.00001% of what actual potential is. So it's like when you're trying to come up with a new concept that's going to, move your business to the next level, the last thing you want to do is use your own mind to try and think of what's going to work, right? Because you can't come up with anything creative, or go to Google, right? Because all of those ideas are already out there. You want to come up with an idea that is completely 100% creative, that is completely unique to the market, right? And the way to do that is to get outside of this circle of what we know. And so the way that I do it is by just tapping into the present moment, and that's when the unknown is revealed to me. So literally I sit in a meditation and being like, what is going to be the next thing that is going to move the needle in my business, right? And I'm waiting for answers to be revealed to me in that moment. So I can't remember who it was. I was listening to some Napoleon Hill lecture, and he brought it up, but it was somebody really influential, probably back 70 years ago. And what he had done was he had a room, if you're watching this, just like a table like this, but he had a light switch on the table. So what he would do is he had a pen and paper, and then he would flick the light switch off, and he would sit in darkness and wait for new business ideas to come to them. As soon as something came to him, he would turn on the light, and then he would write out the idea. And this is essentially what he was doing. Was he before meditation and all this was like a big thing, he was learning how to tap into the present moment where the unknown is revealed to him. And that unknown is true creativity. Okay, so you need to have, I'm not saying that is what you need to use, but you need to have some sort of method of getting outside the circle of what you know. Okay, for me, it's in meditation, connecting to the present moment and waiting for that answer to come to me. For you, it might be something different. That's just what I know works for me. This is what has kept me in business longer than any other bar downtown Windsor, right? Is because I'm able to connect to this field of infinite intelligence, and I'm able to come up with concepts that no one else is doing, right? So, or morphing a concept that I have seen somewhere else and putting my own little twist on it, right? So whatever it may be, it's like you need to be creative. I think that is probably one of the most important things, is that you need to be constantly being creative. And that is only going to come when you have the passion. So if your why is money and it's just all about getting, okay, you're going to run into a bunch of problems, okay? And so Dr. David Hawkins created the scale of consciousness, and it goes from 0 to 1,000. And at 1,000 would be enlightenment, 0 would be like the lowest of the low. So anything below the level of 200, which is the level of courage, is egocentric based thinking, being, whatever you want to call it. And in that egocentric based thinking, where the ego is in control, right? The sense of I, the thinking that you are the center of the universe, everything is based on getting, okay? Because we believe that we need to get something in order to experience more happiness or more joy, right? On the other side of 200, everything is based on giving, right? And we're not so focused on getting anymore because we already are those states. We already are in a state of joy or in a state of happiness, right? And when you're already in the state of joy and happiness, then you don't need to worry about getting anything else outside of you to feel the way that you want to feel by getting something. You already feel that way. So when you already feel that way, you focus more on giving. And when you focus more on giving, that is when you start to receive. I know it's a conundrum, and it's hard to get out of the mentality that you have to let go of your desires in order to attract what it is you want into your life. But I guess that would be like the last thing that I'll leave this podcast on, is that whatever it is in business, whatever it is that you want to do, it has to be focused on giving. If you get caught up in the giving, in the getting mentality, two things are going to happen. One, people are going to see right through that bullshit, okay? And two, you're going to be in a constant state of forcing everything, right? You're going to be forcing every dollar that you make. You're going to be forcing with your employees. You're going to be forcing with every single person, okay? So if you can move to the state of giving, everything turns around, and it's in giving that we receive. And we move to this place where everything is just flowing into our life and becomes effortless. So these are the tips to, it's not even just about how to start a business. These are the tips for not only how to start a business, but also these are the tips to how to expand or improve upon your current business. So if you're a small business owner or an entrepreneur or a wannabe entrepreneur, all of these things, if you apply them, will be insanely powerful and beneficial for you. So thanks for taking the time to listen. If you haven't already, just make sure you click that subscribe button. Every single Wednesday, I'm releasing podcasts that are about just improving your life in general, right? And yeah, they always sometimes have a business element to them. Sometimes they have a spiritual element to them, but essentially that's what I am, is a spiritual entrepreneur. And I want to bring those principles and concepts to everyone that wants to hear them and wants to transform their lives, transform their businesses, and make a positive impact on this life. So if that is aligned with what you are aligned with, then make sure to click that subscribe button, and you can get notified every time I release a new podcast. Thanks for taking the time to listen, and I'll see you again next Wednesday.